Good day to you. I am not an indefatigable optimist. I am an indefatigable realist. There is a phenomenon of disseminating spurious demographic data, which is a source of depression and defeatism, and there are the correct data which are a source for optimism, but this optimism is based on reality. Back in the time of Herzl, he had a rival in the form of the leading demographer at that time, the leading historian at that time, Shimon Dubnov, and using the same methods as today, Dubnov disseminated demographic forecasts. In March 1898, Dubnov disseminated a demographic forecast according to which the best case scenario, which he did not believe in the year 2000, as he claimed in 1898, at the most, there could only be 500,000 Jews between the Mediterranean and the Jordan. Herzl, despite the fact that at that time there was only an 8% minority between the Mediterranean and the Jordan, he did not listen to that prophecy, the demographic prophecy of doom. He continued on his path. And before the establishment of the state, there was once again a struggle between the activist leadership and the demographers. When the founder of the Central Bureau of Statistics later on in 1949, the late Professor Roberto Bacchi, who until this day is considered the greatest expert in the area of demographics and statistics, the spiritual father of those demographic prophets of doom today too, he acted systematically to postpone the establishment of the state for demographic considerations, and he issued a series of demographic forecasts, and one of them, before the establishment of the state, he sent to Ben-Gurion and Eshkol and the other leaders, claimed that in the year 2001, once again, based on the best case scenario, which he too did not believe in, between the Jordan and the Mediterranean, there would be no more. Thus claimed the greatest authority and spiritual father of demographers in Israel, there could be no more than 2.3 million Jews in the year 2001. And according to that forecast, there were supposed to be only 33% of the population. And of course, we know that once again, the activist leadership did not accept that demographic forecast. And this struggle continues to this very day. The reality today, and if we could show the demographic present PowerPoint, please. The reality today is entirely guided by documentation and gives a sense of optimism based on the facts on the ground. The presentation, the study that I'm involved in, begins in the year 1997 when the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics claimed that there were 2.8 million Arabs there. And here we have the gap between the Palestinian datum on the right and on the left, the Israeli figures, and this is divided up into a number of parts. In blue, the Palestinians count, contrary to every other entity in the world, residents who are absent from the territory for over a year. And it is a clear, everywhere in the world, a professor, a student, a businessman, a consultant, a student, tourist who has been absent for a year is not counted in the census, no matter what his legal status is. Once a person has been absent for 366 days, that person is no longer counted. And the Palestinians do not do that. They continue to count those who have been absent for more than a year. According to the latest data of the Palestinians, we're talking about more than 400,000 people, almost all of them from Judea and Samaria, a small minority from Gaza, who are included in the figures but in fact are not here. And another section is the Palestinians living in Jerusalem. In 2007, in Israel municipalian area were 210,000. Today it's close to 300,000, and they are counted once as Israeli Arabs because they have Israeli identity cards and Jerusalem is part of Israel, but they are also counted as Arabs of Judea and Samaria by the Palestinian Authority. So what we have here is a double counting of more than 250,000 Arabs. They have to be subtracted, and so we're moving close to 750,000 Arabs. And if we are talking about births, so we're talking about a gap between the birth data based on the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics and the data of the Palestinian Ministry of Health, which concords with the Interior Ministry of the Palestinians, between 50 and 60,000 a year. They tried to convince us 7 years ago that this gap is understandable because this is seemingly a third world primitive society. They don't document it, and there are checkpoints and a war and so on. But we checked, as you will see on the next slide, the Palestinian Ministry of Education records registrations for first grade and on. According to the World Bank, the Europeans, the Israelis, the Palestinians, 100% registration of 6-year-olds to the first grade among the Arabs of Judea and Samaria. The dropouts start in the 3rd and 4th grade, so 100% registration. That should conform to the number of births 6 years earlier. But amazingly enough, it is indeed, it matches the number of documented births, but not the number of births as documented by the Palestinian census, official census. And if we move on, we can look at the emigration data. We saw, according to the Palestinian census, a claim of an addition of 45,000 people every year. No such thing. We checked the migration statistics in all the international passage points along the Jordan, Haifa, Ben Gurion Airport, Ashdod, around the Gaza Strip, Nitzana, Taba, Eilat. The border police documents everything by computer every day, and it turns out that the annual migration balance is negative from 1950. According to the Jordanian documents and the Egyptian documents, to this day, with the exception of 6 years, every year there is a negative balance. And in the recent years, from last year alone, there was minus 18,000 3 years earlier. Every year, 17,000, a negative balance of migration. And here we can see also, and we can see the subject of migration into the Green Line until November 2003, when it was decided to stop that grotesque situation when any Arab man or woman who married an Israeli Arab automatically got an Israeli identity card, and then they brought their second and third wife and parents and brothers and sisters and so on, and this was stopped in 2003. But until that point, from 1997 to 2003, 115,000 Arabs, mostly from Judea and Samaria, received Israeli identity cards because they had married Israeli Arabs. And once again, we have that double counting. They continue to be counted as Arabs of Judea and Samaria, but they are also counted as Israeli Arabs. So we have to subtract 150,000. And this brings us to the census up till 2011, and according to the documentation of the births and deaths and migration inward and outward, the datum for the end of 2011 is 1.65 million and not 2.6 million. Gaza is 350 million, 1.350,000. And until Mubarak fell, the Egyptians strangled and choked Gaza and didn't let anybody out. But from what we're hearing on the ground, the border is open today. And if the last figure that we have documented to 2005 is 11,000 minus leaving Gaza for 2005, the figures today show that it has jumped by three or four times, but we don't have the documentation, and that's why it's not included in our study. But that figure is even larger than we note here. On the other hand, in Judea and Samaria, the gap of 1 million between the real figures and the figure that the Palestinians claim, that is the result of a relatively liberal migration or immigration policy on the part of the Jordanians. And so in the area of Judea and Samaria and the Green Line, we have a majority of 66% Jews. If we add the Gaza Strip, it's 57%. Today, the most realistic figure is the one in the middle, 66% Jewish majority. The question is, what is the trend? In order to understand the trend, we examined the figures from since 1950 up to 2011, and we have a curve of population growth that you can see here. From 1950 to 1967, there is no population growth. The Jordanians did not build any infrastructures for health or medicine or education or employment, and that was an incentive to leave. Infant mortality was very, very high. Lifespan was very short, and from 1967, the terrible, cruel Zionist occupier brought about an increase in population unlike anything seen among the Arabs of Judea and Samaria because of the improvement in infrastructures, education and medicine and so on, including inside the Green Line. And so we see this upward leap, and that is the trap of the demographers in Israel. They assumed that this upward trend would continue, and they didn't study, apparently, Demographics 101, because after this rise, there's always a plateau. And when a third world country encounters a Western society, there is always a decrease. Here we see a plunge. The more they develop, the less births there are. And so we see in 2007, 60%. The faster the modernization, the faster the drop in population is. In 67, 70% lived in the country, and in 2011, 70% are urban, but with very high unemployment in an environment that supports a high birth rate, and we see the education level is rising among women. Women are working more, and so there is no longer that custom of getting married at the age of 15 and having the first child at the age of 16. Now they get married at 20, and they stop giving birth at 10 years earlier. And family planning, of course. 70% of Arab women, according to a UN survey recently conducted by Arabs, by the way, 70% of the women in Judea and Samaria use at least one form of birth control. And, of course, the subject of migration, most of the migrants are young people, and once again, this affects the birth rate. And compared to that, inside the Green Line, we see the gap between Jewish and Arab women of 6 births. Today, the gap is half. And even more so, today, the number of births of a young Arab woman aged 20 to 30 in Judea and Samaria and inside the Green Line is equal to the number of births of a young Jewish woman in Israel. 3 births per woman, with one difference. Among the Jews, the trend is above 3, and among the Arab women is less than 3. and we can move ahead. This is most clear from 1995 up to the end of 2011, and we can see a situation where the number of Arab births is more or less stable, thanks to very successful integration of infrastructures. Among Jews, it's 56%. This is unprecedented in the whole world, not only in the West, but even in the third world. The number of births is going down, and here it's rising. This is at a time when among the ultra-Orthodox there are fewer births, and the secular population is growing with more births. And so to sum up, I would say that it cannot be claimed that we should give up geography in order to save demographics. And anyone who claims that, even if he is the president of the State of Israel, either he is wrong, very dramatically so, or he is misleading us in a scandalous way. Thank you very much.